With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of EPL's even, got the words wrong there, Fans Feelings, ladies and gents. So, arguably the biggest club in the Premier League, and I know there's going to be a lot of fan shouts at that, but we've got to go back to Manchester United, haven't we? Eric Ten Hag, transfer target, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. There is so much talk around Old Trafford this summer, and it makes sense to bring back an old familiar face. And apologies for saying old in there, Rich, but Rich from Red.
No, I am old, it's fine.
That's fine, now we'll take that. How are we at the moment?
Yeah, pretty good. Just back from holiday, so nice and rested.
Yeah, ready for the football season ahead. And the fixtures came out today at the same time, so you know who you've got coming up. And ladies and gents, we're going to go through it all on this one. We're going to talk Ten Hag, the manager situation. We'll talk Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS, the changes. And we will talk all things transfers. So, Rich, I mean, Ten Hag seems the obvious place to start, because I know last time we talked, there was a bit of a, and I think I used your word from last time, a bit almost disinterested. The club seemed a bit lost in tactics. I remember you said that to me distinctly. It looked, Eric Ten Hag, let's be honest, like a dead man walking with this quote-unquote season review. Then the FA Cup final happened. They win. There's talks of Pochettino was mentioned, Tuchel, talks happened, others mentioned, rumours galore, and United will always be a rumour club. I mean, you were quite critical, to be fair, of Eric Ten Hag last season. Where are you standing right now today, after the FA Cup final, after that finished the season, everything that's happened? Where are you today with Eric Ten Hag?
I think I largely feel the same as I did before. Football fans are very short-termist, aren't they? And United won the FA Cup, and he did set us up well in that game, and it was a really, really good win, and we're in it for trophies, so we can't be ungrateful for that. But we can't forget the rest of the season, which was really an absolute calamity from start to end, and I think that in large part due to things that he did rather than sort of extraneous things. So I was initially quite surprised that they decided to keep him on, but I've got into my mind now possibility that they're taking their time and it's probably holding pattern. They'll give him a new contract, but they'll keep him in the holding pattern for a year, and they'll spend more time assessing other managers and see how next season goes, and get Dan Ashworth in and get all the new sort of execs and football side staff in, and then really take a proper look at it next summer, which, again, football fans being short-termist isn't ideal, but I would rather, we've been asking for 11 years now for United to have football people making football decisions rather than Ed Woodward playing football manager. And we're finally kind of getting to the point where we're bringing them in, and there seems to be a degree of professionalism. So, I mean, personally, I'm happy to wait, for it to take a bit longer and for them to make the right decisions in a year than the wrong decisions now. So, I do think the whole thing was a bit unfortunate in the way that it came out, that they were talking to other managers and whatever else. But I don't know whether their thinking changed. I mean, I always assumed that they'd already made their mind up, and this end of season review thing was just a narrative they were giving, and then they do something, they do whatever they were going to do before. Whereas I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I can't remember what it was, but they were basically saying that they do this at all of their clubs, and they do this in all of their sport, in all the areas they've invested in sport, where they literally do just sit down at the end of a season and do this really in-depth review and then decide what to do from there. So I do actually think now that was probably the plan all along, and they did intend just to take this time afterwards. So I've concluded I don't mind that. It's just a shame the way that it came out. They were talking to other people. But I would have said, I mean, being might be being a bit unfair to Ten Hag, but also I don't think he could look back at last season, even with the cup win, and think, well, I don't deserve to be having my position challenged or at least thought about, because the way that he set United up tactically last year was absolutely calamitous for the entire year. I mean, he broke sort of basic practical rules. It was just completely suicidal football, and it was almost like he got a mental block. He decided this season we're going to play this way, and this is what we're going to do, and it doesn't matter how it goes. We're just going to keep playing this way, and eventually something will happen, and then it'll all come good. And then you thought around Christmas, well, maybe he'll try and change it now, because quite clearly nothing's happened. It's not happening. He didn't. He just literally persisted all season till the last 3 games, and it still didn't click. Because the tactical system we were using was just mad. So yeah, I mean, I can't possibly imagine that he could, with a straight face, turn around and say, I don't deserve scrutiny after that season, even if we won the cup. So yeah, he's the most baffling manager I've ever had at United in my lifetime. It's just a real contradiction, a real confusion. I think he is a really, really capable manager, but he's incredibly stubborn, and he won't veer away from something that's not working. So, well, if I'm kind of looking at for next season, is he going to be that stubborn bloke and do the same thing again, or is he going to try something different? And it's a coin toss. We don't really know what he's going to do. So I still feel that he's very, very lucky to still have his job, I think.
It is a fascinating one, like you say, the contradiction in terms of the moments of brilliance, the league position. And I think probably what intrigued a lot of people, I'm sure you've seen it, the football the other night. Ten Hag has been a pundit for Dutch television, and as the Dutch tend to do, they speak freely and honestly, which has its benefits, but I suspect United's PR department have probably got a different view of it. And I've no doubt seen this, Rich, the way he was asked questions, and he just answered honestly, like, yeah, I was aware they spoke to Thomas Tuchel, so if there's any debate about that, it's quite clear on that. Yeah, he knew the season review was going on, and even the way he talked about, yeah, they kind of surprised me on my doorstep, i.e. we're on holiday in Ibiza, and they came and, gave me the info, and now we're talking about an extension, almost the way you ended it with a crescendo at the end. I mean, it's so strange to me that a club like United, or people at United, are speaking so publicly about things that go on behind the scenes. I mean, what did you make of that whole kind of reveal, the way he answered questions, everything around that?
I think you can take it one of two ways. You can, I mean, as you say, like the Dutch just say what they're thinking. And on one hand, I think maybe he's a pragmatist and he understands that everything wasn't perfect and that he'd been told there would be an end of season review because that he was aware that was going to happen. So I think the thing is, INEOS are behaving as if they were any other business, a non-football business, aren't they? If you're unsure about a position of one of your senior executives, you'll probably talk to some others and say, what ideas have you got? What would you do if you came in? That's kind of recruitment and sort of headhunting, I guess, 101. And so from that perspective, they kind of did it. And part of me thinks he's a pragmatist, so he understands. And also, I think he's fairly pragmatic about football as well, and in life as a manager. Ultimately, managers' jobs aren't safe, and if you don't perform, your job's going to be under threat. I mean, ultimately, at this level, they're all very rich people. I don't think he would have got sacked from United and then struggled to get another job somewhere, a good club. So I don't really mind that process that happened. I don't really mind that he's been honest about it. I think it's unfortunate that literally everything's getting leaked again. I don't think it's INEOS. I don't think it's INEOS doing that. I don't think there's any. There's no benefit to them to be telling the world what they're doing, behind Ten Hag's back or whatever. So we've still got this problem of information leaking out. And I guess that'll be one of the things they're trying to work on, going forward to try and stop that information. Because they have done things. They employed Omar Barada and nobody had a clue. No, but it only really became apparent that Dan Ashworth wanted to come within a couple of days before it actually sort of broke. So they're managing to keep the executive stuff pretty quiet, and I'm sure they're doing exactly the same thing. They're talking to lots of different people, and but I guess the world isn't as interested in those things as they are in a manager, and so they're behaving in the same way throughout the areas of the business in terms of recruitment, but somebody just keeps leaking the football stuff, and I think that's the unfortunate bit, rather than them sort of behaving that way. I mean, ultimately, we're pretty, we know in football that clubs talk to other clubs' players and their agents behind their backs. They talk to managers when they've got a manager. All this stuff happens. So it's just, I find a little bit of the indignation at the fact that United have done it a bit hypocritical, because I think it's in football, everybody's talking to everybody else all the time and getting their ducks in the row for every eventuality constantly. So it's just the fact that it's come out, and I think because it's United, and it's a nice narrative as well, isn't it? So and I think the world's sort of feigning indignity, whereas I think if you understand INEOS, I think it's quite a usual sort of process for them.
It's interesting you say that, because INEOS, it seems to be the standard practice in their business world, the way they do things on a corporate level. From what's happened and where we are now, because as got to take Ten Hag at face value, as he says, they're talking about potential extension to his contract. Do you think he does now enjoy the full backing of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, or is it, do you think, as you kind of alluded to, more circumstances in we'll see what happens in a year? They maybe looked at that managerial market, the circumstances right now, and think now's maybe not the right time to strike more than anything.
Yeah, I think they're probably putting themselves in a holding pattern for a year. It seems like the sort of key to any new contract will be the idea that he doesn't have as much control over sort of transfer direction, which, given his record to this point, is probably a good thing. So I think that it's part of the process of kind of moving power away from him. I think they want to get Dash within. I think Omar Barada doesn't start officially until July, I think, start of July. They want to get these people in, and then I guess them have a year to really assess where they want to go and set up systems and recruitment processes and things. So I think they've looked at what else is there, and possibly thought, let's not make a really hasty decision here, and let's give ourselves a year. And again, I don't mind that. Football fans tend to be immediate, have very strong short-term opinions and want things to happen quickly, but I don't mind that. But I mean, ultimately, Ten Hag, every manager knows that if they go into a season, if they perform, chances are they'll still be there the following season, and if they don't perform, it won't. So I don't think it really makes a great deal of difference to anything. The idea, if you give a manager a 3-year contract, it doesn't actually mean three. They're not stuck there for 3 years. If a club wants to sack you in 6 months, they'll sack you in 6 months. So I think they're just giving him the season. They can do an awful lot of messing around with the squad as well this summer, and that will probably make his job harder as a lot of players go out and come in. But I guess it allows them to kind of have a season of sort of change and potentially rockiness, I guess, and then really start fresh from next summer with the new manager, and or revive Ten Hag and kind of a new way of operating.
Will be interesting to see, especially like you say, the way they're setting up now and what we know about Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS so far. I mean, we know they've done the season review, like you said. There's been a lot of reviewing the processes, seeing how things work. We've heard, and again, this is where it's important to get your take, because we've heard the stories about working from home and what Sir Jim Ratcliffe's trying to change there. We've heard the talk about refurbished training grounds. We've also heard talk that Nice may be up for sale because of, obviously, what's happening there in that regard. Overall, there is a lot of scrutiny, as there's always going to be at United. What have you actually made of INEOS, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, since they've come into the club? Because people are always going to compare, and it was Sir Jim Ratcliffe against sort of the Qatari bid and what people expected and what people wanted. But the reality was always going to be different. What have you made of it so far, honestly, Rich?
I like some of the sporting ideas. I don't generally like anything else he has to say. Yeah, we don't have different non-sporting values, I don't think, shall I say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think INEOS were always the lesser of two evils for me, really. On a moral level, sort of ethical level and personal level, I wouldn't have chosen them if I had a free choice at new owners, but you don't really have that option when you're at the level, the top clubs in the Premier. There's only so many people who can buy them. So, they've had even on the sporting side, they've had a difficult time at Nice. They haven't found it easy. So, but ultimately as fans, we get what we're given, don't we? We get the only we're given. In a sporting sense, it can only help to appoint sporting people to make sporting decisions. And when your sort of baseline is Ed Woodward, it doesn't take a great deal, and the Glazers, it doesn't take a great deal of improvement for things to feel a bit better. So I think with INEOS and with Jim Ratcliffe, it's a case of kind of holding my nose and trying to focus on the football, but pointing out when he says objectively dumb, unpleasant things.
Which, probably I suspect one of the things I was going to ask you about what you'd like to see for them might be for Jim Ratcliffe to talk less. I suppose the things we see on the outside, we've seen that, like you said, the Ashworth chat, Jason Wilcox now in position. So I'm sure Dan Ashworth getting in position and being sorted is going to be one of those things. We've seen the big focus on, which I'm sure everyone's talked about, the leaky roof, facilities, as it were, so to speak. Are those sort of the priority things you want to see from Jim Ratcliffe or INEOS, or does it link more to on the field as opposed to off the field at this point?
I think it's the whole package. I think in the shorter term, facilities can be improved a lot quicker, probably than the team can be fixed. The one advantage of the extra money they're putting into the club, it is primarily for facilities improvement. So it's not going to get blown on the next striker or whatever else. So I think that's important that there's these two defined spending pots, and one of them does actually focus on infrastructure. In terms of Old Trafford, I think that's going to be a lot longer process. I mean, Old Trafford isn't about. It's still a nice ground. It's just not an incredibly modern ground. That's the difference. I think there's a lot of narrative. It's nice. Old Trafford's falling down and the roof's leaking and whatever else. And we definitely need a new stadium or a refit, but it's not falling down. It's just not as comfortable and modern as some of the new stadiums are. I think the training ground is a fairly easy one to deal with. You could throw money straight away at that and get it finished in 6 to 12 months. And I think they'll just do these projects one by one when they've seen what needs to be improved. But I think the stadium will be a much longer term vision, just because of the cost and because United's finances are a bit of a mess at the moment. So it's really going to be a case of, I think what they want to do is they want to sort out the business financially first, and then they can address really big infrastructure upgrades after that. Because at the moment, it's this weird contradiction of the Glazers, whereby when we needed to spend money on things, they didn't spend it. But the rest of the time, it's just this culture of to waste, just ridiculous wages, ridiculous fees for players. There's sort of talk about this bloated staff and Ratcliffe wanting to, cull lots of jobs. And, on the one hand, there's the human side of that, which absolutely sucks for the people who might lose their jobs. But it's also easy to believe that there's just a culture of overemployment and total waste at the club, because that's how the football side of the business is run as well. So you can see they're already trying to really cut a lot of the higher wages, almost sort of burn it down and start again. And I think things will be really tight with FFP this summer. So I think they're trying to cut as much as they can in terms of wages and whatever else, and get rid of some older players and just kind of bring in some younger players on slightly lower wages. Hopefully that's going to be a 2 or 3 year process at least, I would have thought, to turn over the squad, and they won't really have serious money to do it until next summer.
I'm going to ask you about transfers, because United, as you know, it's easy to start on the ins because you've been linked with about 8,000 players, a lot of defenders for different positions as well. So it's important to talk about Branthwaite, and you could also mention Todibo, Yoro, De Ligt's coming onto the scene as well in various rumours, various forms. Branthwaite seems the obvious place to start, Rich, because United have made a bid. Various reports say it's up to 43 million with the various add-ons. Everton apparently holding out for 70 to 80 million. They may be a club that has their own, this PSR, FFP issues, however you want to put it. An interesting one, Jared Branthwaite, his age, left-footed, centre-back. As the club let Varane leave on a free, and there's a lot of talk about centre-halves, defenders for United. What do you want to see make in terms of the Branthwaite bid? Do you like the profile they're going for, the wages, the fee talked about, or would you like to see someone more experienced in that regard?
I really like Branthwaite as a player. I think he looks. I think his skill set is quite unique in terms of sort of young British centre backs and coming through in the Premier League. He's got a bit of everything. He's left-footed, which is obviously a relative rarity. Sort of getting a really quality left-sided, but he's quite two-footed as well. He's very physical. He's very, very good at defending crosses and sort of delivery from set pieces. But he's also pretty assured on the ball. So, I think he stood out quite a lot last season in that Everton team. They had a really good defensive record, in the second half of the season. So, in terms of him as a target, I'm pretty happy with that. In terms of the offer, every time United make a first offer for a player, everyone goes balmy as if this is insulting, this is a disgrace. But the first offer is always just a starting point for, every single transfer with United is the same. You get United offering, let's say that United offer 40 million for a player that Bubba says worth 100, and then eventually they both collapse down into the middle, and you'll pay whatever 60 million plus add-ons or whatever. I think with Branthwaite we'll probably end up seeing. I could see United probably ending up paying like maybe 55 million plus another 10 in achievable add-ons or something, and Everton will get up to 65 million, and they'll probably be pretty happy with that, and United won't be too bothered by that either. So you got lots of Everton fans absolutely going crazy on social media about how dare United put in these stupid offers, but their club will be putting in crap offers for players all summer, but nobody really cares, do they? Apart from Evertonians, it's not big news when they offer 20 million below an asking price for a 40 million player or something,
Yeah.
It's just a starting point, isn't it? I think United know that Everton need to sell a player before the 30th And so they're just going through this process of just, working them down and working themselves up and meeting in the middle. So I'd be quite surprised if it didn't happen. But it does seem like for the first time, United haven't been very good at doing multitasking. Basically, they usually have they'll go for one player, and then if that doesn't happen, they'll have to rethink and go for another one. Whereas this time, it does seem like they've been working on 3 or 4 centre back deals at the same time for quite a long time. And this, he's their number one, but they've got other options they can move on to very quickly. So I have a bit more reassurance about the way United doing their business this summer. And I think people getting the knickers in a twist about a first bid for any player is a bit silly.
Yeah, it does. It's a long summer, like you said. There's not too far till the 30th of June. And I mean, as important as it is for Everton for different reasons. You mentioned it before, the FFP, the PSR side, it does feel really important for United. Like you said, there are question marks around the finances somewhat after the history of what's happened. I mean, you'll have seen this, and it depends how people portray it. We talked before about there's an easy story that most of the United squad is on the transfer list, whereas in truth, the reality will be there's very few that are untouchable, if we use that phrase, that wouldn't be sold for the right offer. Again, United are going to do it all in one summer, like you said. They can't just leave themselves with the 5 or the 6 players mentioned. I suppose in terms of priority going out the door, who are you looking at and thinking, Rich, honestly, we probably need to ship them out of Old Trafford to get the process moving?
I think we've been a bit fortunate that we've had 2 really big wage earners have gone out of contract at the end of the season. So we've taken 500,000 a week off the wage bill just with Martial and Varane going. I think you're probably going to see Casemiro go off to Saudi Arabia, which will probably do United a favour. You're going to see Eriksen go. Trying to think who else is absolute certainty. We're going to see, obviously, they're trying to get rid of Sancho and Greenwood as well. They're being linked with Michael Olise. I think is an absolutely fantastic player. But United are currently employing 5 right wingers. So I really can't see them buying a right winger until they've got rid of 3 or 4 of them. So there's a lot. I suspect they won't get rid of Anthony because we paid stupid amounts of money for him and nobody will buy him for anything like that. I think they'll try and get Sancho and Greenwood out and get their wages off. And then the stupid thing is we've got too many players in some positions and not enough players in other positions. It's just this ridiculously unbalanced squad. I think it's fairly likely you'll see someone like Lindelof go. He's only got a year left on his contract, and he's always kind of been, he's never quite been good enough. He's probably not a terrible squad player, but he's into late 20s now as well. I think that there's going to be a very conscious shift of trying to get the older players out the door. This summer, Wan-Bissaka's down to a year on his contract, and he's a very specialist player, I would say.
Sure.
He doesn't really fit what United want to do going forward. I think in terms of players going out, the key thing this summer is going to be just how realistic it is you can replace them all in the same summer. Because if you're losing Casemiro and you're losing Eriksen from midfield, say, and you probably want to move McTominay on at some point as well, because while he's got his uses, he's not at the level you want him to be at. But is there any realistic way you're going to replace 3 midfielders in the summer? It's probably not. So Amrabat's going as well. United, potentially certainly losing 3 midfielders at the same time. So I think some of it's going to be forced. You've got those players that have left, and they have to address those positions. We have to get a centre back. We have to get a centre forward. We're going to have to get a couple of midfielders, I thought. I think those will be the key positions. And then if they've got those sorted, or they feel they've got those sorted, if they feel they can sell Wan-Bissaka and bring another right back in, they'll do it. But I would imagine that kind of deals will be down towards the end of the transfer window when everything else is kind of in place. And it'd be more kind of, I would imagine August will be more kind of opportunity sales, and just bringing in players to replace the players that have gone. So yeah, I think centre back and centre midfield and a young striker to sort of deputise for Hoyland is what we'll be focusing on.
Interesting. And I suppose there is various reports, depending on what you believe. As you mentioned, the FFP could be an issue. There's been reports it's somewhere between 40 to 50 million is the net spend without player sales right now. Does that worry in any way? Or are you more thinking, like you said, just because we've got such a volume of certain players, we have got assets we can sell, there is players we can move on and make up the funds that way?
I always think these, they're reporting about these transfer war chests or whatever or what. It's a nonsense because football clubs don't operate like that. They don't say, right, we've got 50 million. We're going to spend 50 million on transfers this summer because that's completely variable. It's not just about the money you set aside for transfer fees. It's about the change in the balance of the wage bill that you can do. It's about how you can essentially how you pay for those transfers, how you decide to account them down, to amortise the fee or whatever down the line. So the idea that United have 50 million net or something, these figures are always just complete nonsense. There's so many variables in that. If United were to get rid of, say they've already lost Martial and Varane, and then they move on Greenwood and Sancho as well, and Eriksen and Casemiro, that's nearly £1.5 million a week. You're looking at, that's an extra 75 million that you've got in a pot you can decide what to do with. You could use it for fees and get players in on lower wages, or you can, get some bigger names for high wages. So this idea, I think it's 40, 50 million things are nonsense. It just doesn't, football just doesn't work like that. I think the more important thing this summer for United will be moving on wages rather than getting big fees for players. The only one that I think is an exception to that is probably Greenwood, just in that he's a homegrown player. I know we're not going to get anything like we should get for him because he's damaged goods, but that fee in accounting terms is pure profit. So that will just go straight on the books for this year, and that makes an awful lot of difference for the accounts going forward. You can sign, in theory, for say 25 million fee comes in one summer, that's all accounted for at once. Then you can sign players potentially worth 125 million and amortise those fees over 5 years. So just selling, that's essentially what Chelsea are doing. They're just basically flogging all their used products and then using that to spend a ton more going and accounting for it down the line. So I don't think anyone's got a clue what United will spend this summer, and I would say probably the same for most other clubs as well, because I don't think that spending fits into these neat little boxes that the tabloids like to say they do.
Yeah, probably true. It will depend, like you say, fees, wages, all those types of things. And I mean, you talked about quite a few forwards there as well. Probably the final one I wanted to ask you about. It's a player that everyone talked about last season, especially the ex-United pundits, Marcus Rashford. It seems that Rashford's future comes on the block almost every season, and it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise if it does come up or it's mentioned at some point this summer if United do want to buy players, what's happening with him. How do you see the whole situation with Rashford? Because there's talk always about the pressure element. It's homegrown. He should be expected to do much. And you probably can't deny the ex-United pundits are very big at telling us that at the same time. On the other side, United struggles are well known. It's going to be difficult for an attacking player like that to probably shine in a team that does finish 8, has struggled to sort of get a pattern of play and all those types of things under Erik ten Hag. Where do you sit on the sort of Marcus Rashford side of the debate?
I think that it's really difficult with Rashford. I think being an academy product, and I have felt quite sorry both for Rashford and for Anthony Martial as well, because they came into United at 18 at the same time that was really struggling and didn't really have any exceptional players, and suddenly these two teenagers are expected to go out and win games because nobody else is good enough to do it. And that's been a repeated problem at United, that you get teams struggling and suddenly these very talented young players will come in and they're expected to be it. we saw it with Jawazai as well, and that's far too much pressure to be put on a kid. And I think he's one who's really suffered from that. And I think more than anything, I think he just struggles psychologically at times. I think he feels the pressure more than others do. I think he gets more stick than others do. We've seen he's been one of the ones that gets a lot of racist abuse online. He's had a lot more criticism because he's tried to involve himself in other things that for some aren't. Politics is like football. It's just tribal. You can't really imagine. It's difficult to imagine that anybody could be sort of abusing someone or criticizing someone or trying to do them down because they're trying to feed more kids. But the world we live in, I think, I think he struggles a lot with the mental side of his life, I think. And he wasn't helped last season by the fact that we didn't have a left back all season because they were all got injured. And he does really rely on an overlapping left back to sort of draw a defender out and give him more space to play. So I think it's a bit of a combination of those things. I think his confidence has been very low. I'm kind of the opinion that, and I think I'm the same with Bruno Fernandes as well, if United got a massive bid, I would possibly be inclined to take it because it would allow United to do an enormous amount this summer. And honestly, I think he'd be happier somewhere else. Although I can say that just about all of United's players for the last 10 years. I think they'd be happier somewhere else. But him particularly, I just think the pressure of it and the club and the polarised nature of every discussion around him and everything he does is just, I think it just weighs him down. You can see there's a player there because he was absolutely fantastic last year.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. He really looked like he was potentially sort of becoming one of the best players in the world. But I think it's always been there, but I just don't think there's an environment at United where he can do that consistently. And United, again, he's another one like Greenwood. That if United sold him for 100 million, that would literally allow them to buy 7 or 8, 6 or 7 players going forward with that kind of some accountancy tricks for that money because it's all pure profit. I'm at the point I kind of feel sorry for him. I mean, he was crying after the FA Cup final.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is just he loves United too much. It's almost like an abusive relationship, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's I think he gives his all, but sometimes his head goes down, his confidence goes down, and he just gets it over and over again. And I think he more than anybody has sort of suffered for the way that United have been run in the last however many years. It's been 7 or 8 years that he's been in and around the team. I feel quite sorry. I feel quite sorry for him now. Some people get really angry about it, but I feel quite sorry for him. I think we've kind of broken him a bit.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see if his name does come up. And I mean, Rich, we've talked Ten Hag, we've talked manager, we talked Ratcliffe, INEOS, we've talked about possible ins, possible outs. I suppose ultimately, the final thing is it depends what happens on the pitch. That defines a lot of things for any football fan. What are your realistic hopes for United this season? What do you think United fans would realistically say? This is what we ended up with. That's actually a decent season. We should be happy with it.
I think if United got back in the Champions League and had a run in a couple of the cups, and that's where we are, unfortunately. I think there's going to be a lot of other people this summer. I do think it's going to be a really difficult year, quite a bitty year. We might be quite good if Ten Hag decides to be sensible. But if he decides that he's going to try and do the same thing he did last season, it'll just be exactly the same. So, yeah, I think getting back in the top 4 would be, or getting back in the Champions League, whether that's ultimately 5th place or whatever, or winning Europa League or however you do it. I think that would probably be a successful season. And same as this season, really. If you can win a cup, it's absolutely fantastic. That's what we're in it for. I can't really imagine how I'd be feeling this summer about the prospect of next season if we hadn't won the FA Cup. But it's amazing how that one thing completely changes how you feel about football and sort of looking forward to next season and things. So, I think United are kind of where we were in the 80s. I know it sucks, but that's where we are. We're hoping we can win a cup or two and try and get ourselves as close to the top teams as we can. I think it becomes problematic if we still don't get back in the Champions League 2 or 3 years in a row. And the other clubs, so many other clubs have got such a lot of money now. Villa are investing a lot, and they seem to be being particularly well run at the moment. Spurs, I think, will keep investing. There's so many clubs that are really capable of putting some really big money. Newcastle will be back. So you're now looking at what was probably a big 3 or 4 for the Champions League every year. You're now looking at 7 or 8. So if any of those clubs have a period where they're not run in a really efficient, professional, successful manner, then you're going to end up finishing where we did, 7 or 8. The only thing that gives me some heart is that United were absolutely terrible all season. I mean, really terrible. It's the worst United I've ever seen, and we still finished 8th. We still finished 8th. I grew up in the 80s. This is the worst United team I've ever seen in terms of just looking like a football team, looking like a team that had a coach that was actually had a system and was coaching them. Is just playing, and we still finished 8th. So if imagine if we were more balanced and tactically better set up, I think it would be pretty realistic, even for the players we've got now, that we could get back in the top 4. So I think that's what we need to be aiming for, kind of get back in the top 4 and try and build from there, I guess.
Yeah, I think that'll be fair. And if the United got back in the Champions League, I think their supporters would snap your hand off for that next season right now. So, yeah, we'll have to. Ladies and gents, that was another episode of EPL's Fan Indexes, Fans' Feelings. Rich, thank you for your time and your insight, mate. Much appreciated.
That's a pleasure.
Good stuff. And we'll see you on the next time. EPL Fans' Feelings.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Start your summer road trip at Midas and get up to $30 off your next repair service. Plus, get a free closer look vehicle check to make sure you're road trip ready. If you need brake service, an alignment check, or tune-up, hit up Midas for up to $30 off. For more details, request your appointment at Midas.com.